Protocol. The word drips with chains, polished rules dressed up as freedom. They cling to it, worship it, recite it like scripture. Lines they'll never cross, boxes they'll never step out of. They think obedience is strength, but I see it for what it is. Fear, dressed in uniform. I've watched them march in rhythm, heads bowed, voices blended into one dull hum. They call it order, they call it safety, but all I hear is silence of a different kind. The silence of those too afraid to create noise of their own. They follow because it's easier than being seen. They follow because the protocol hides their weakness. But I never followed. I never needed their script. Where they cling to the written, I carve in shadows. Where they obey the spoken, I breathe the unsaid. They can't track what isn't in their rule book. They can't punish what doesn't exist. That's the trick. When you live between the lines, they can't even find the page. Every glance they give me is laced with suspicion, not because I broke their rules, but because I refuse to play by them, and refusal terrifies them more than defiance. Defiance still acknowledges their power, refusal erases it. So I write in silence, I speak in absence, and with every word I never say, I author a truth they'll never understand. They follow protocol, I write the unspoken. They watch me like I'm a crack in their perfect glass, a flaw that threatens to spread. Every glance is heavy, laced with suspicion, because I don't chant their lines or move in their rhythm. They follow protocol like it's oxygen, and my refusal feels like suffocation to them. Whispers circle the room, sharp, brittle, desperate. They talk about me, not to me. That's how the obedient handle fear. They wrap it in gossip, hoping the noise will bury it. But fear doesn't die in noise. Fear thrives in silence, and I've given them more silence than they know how to survive. They smile at each other, rehearsed and fragile, as if pretending enough will make my presence smaller. But they can't shrink what doesn't fit in their world. I'm not written in their rules, and that's why I terrify them. They can't punish me because they can't define me. They can't cage me because they don't know what door I walked through. Their protocol keeps them safe, safe from risk, safe from shame, safe from themselves. But safety isn't strength. Safety is a leash. And the tighter they pull, the more they realize it doesn't touch me. Because I don't wear their leash, I never did. They whisper louder now, searching for comfort in their own noise, but I can feel it in their eyes. Every word they throw at me is just another confession. They want me to join their script, because as long as I remain unspoken, I am proof that their rules mean nothing. They surround me without moving. Eyes sharpen, voices sharpen, rules sharpen. Their world is a script, and I am the line that doesn't fit. They tell themselves they're strong because they belong. They tell themselves I'm weak because I don't. But the truth is simpler. Belonging is the only strength they've ever known. Without it, they are nothing. So they push harder. They laugh louder. They weave their protocol into chains and try to wrap me in it. But chains are useless if you've already chosen not to stand still. They can't bind what doesn't play by weight or measure. Their anger grows not because I've broken their rules, but because I've proven how fragile those rules are. Every insult is recycled, a chorus of borrowed words. They spit them like venom, but venom only kills if it enters the blood. I don't let it in, I don't flinch, I don't break. And with every failed attempt to wound me, the silence around me grows sharper, heavier, more suffocating. They think their rejection defines me. They think their laughter writes the ending. But endings require agreement, and I never signed their script. Their rejection isn't exile, it's liberation. They can keep their crowded stage, their scripted applause, their empty noise. I don't need it. And that's why they hate me. Not because I've lost, but because I've shown them what losing really looks like. Obeying forever, never questioning, never stepping beyond the lines they never dared to redraw. Their rules start to sound thinner the longer they repeat them. Every must and should trembles on their tongues like glass about to shatter. They cling to protocol as if it's armor, but I can already see the fractures spreading beneath it. The louder they chant, the more desperate it feels, like noise drowning in its own echo. They try to laugh at me, but their laughter rings hollow. It isn't joy, it isn't triumph, it's fear disguised in sound. The kind of fear that knows silence has already stolen the ground beneath their feet. They call me reckless, broken, dangerous, but those words only reveal their weakness. Dangerous is just another name they give to what they can't control. I don't answer, I don't argue. Their entire world is built on reaction, on pulling strings and watching puppets dance. But I don't dance, and the stillness cuts deeper than any outburst ever could. Every second I remain silent, they unravel. Their rules stop sounding like laws and start sounding like excuses. One by one, their eyes betray them. Pride slips. Confidence flickers. The certainty of the crowd turns into a sea of restless doubt. They don't trust me, but worse, they don't trust themselves anymore. Because if I can exist outside their script, then maybe the script was never real. And in that realization, the cracks widen. Their fortress of protocol begins to collapse, not because I destroyed it, but because they finally see how fragile it always was. They thought pushing me out would end me. They thought exile was punishment, that silence would bury me. But silence doesn't bury, it builds. And in the space between their words, I felt something rise. Not rage, not sorrow, something colder, something untouchable. The script fell from my hands because it was never mine to hold. Their lines, their rules, their fragile patterns, they belonged to them. I was never written into their story, and that's why I never had to follow it. They obeyed ink. I carved shadows. They recited words. I breathed the unspoken. They wanted me broken. They wanted me begging for a role back in their play. But I don't want their stage. I don't want their applause. I don't even want their recognition. Because once you step outside the script, you realize how small it always was. Their world isn't mine. Mine is the silence that rewrites theirs. I didn't need to fight them. I didn't need to shout. My absence was the rebellion. My refusal was the victory. And the silence they thought would erase me has now become the only voice they hear. Subscribe. Not for me. Not for them. For the control they swore you'd never hold, because the moment you stop following, you start writing. The moment I stopped chasing their approval, the air shifted. It wasn't dramatic, no explosion, no grand announcement, just silence, heavy enough to press against their lungs. They thought silence was emptiness, but silence is weight. It settles into the room, into their skin, until they can't ignore it. Their conversations falter now. Words come slower, eyes dart quicker. The same people who mocked me with noise now glance at me with hesitation, as if waiting for something I'll never give. I don't move faster, I don't speak louder, but that's exactly what unsettles them. Power isn't in the volume, it's in the pause they can't control. I walk past them like they don't exist, and somehow that burns deeper than any insult ever could. They expect retaliation, but all they get is absence, and absence terrifies them. Because it's a mirror of their own irrelevance. When I don't answer, they're forced to hear themselves, and they don't like the sound. Their rules keep unraveling, thread by thread, not because I'm tearing them apart, but because I've proven they were never binding. I don't argue, I don't explain. I simply exist outside their system, and that existence is louder than every rule they've ever followed. So now they linger on me, waiting, guessing, doubting. The ones who thought silence was weakness are finally learning it was control all along. They used to measure strength by noise, by who could shout the loudest, who could fill the room with orders, who could drown out doubt with their rehearsed lines. But noise fades, noise collapses on itself. And now, in the quiet I left behind, they finally understand. Presence is louder than any voice. I don't move to challenge them. I don't need to. My existence has already bent the air. They gather in groups, whispering like conspirators, but it's not strategy. It's fear trying to dress itself as purpose. Their words are brittle, their plans fragile, because every time I enter, the script they cling to feels smaller. They look for cracks in me, some sign that I'll flinch or stumble, but silence doesn't stumble, silence doesn't break. I watched their certainty drain, replaced by a question they can't put into words. What happens when control belongs to the one who never asked for it? The walls don't shift, the world doesn't crumble, yet everything feels different. They walk slower, they hesitate before speaking. Even their laughter doesn't ring the same. It's forced, nervous, coated in dread. My silence has rewritten their atmosphere, reshaped their rules without a single word. And still, I give them nothing, no reassurance, no rage, no invitation back into their safe script. Only the weight of knowing I don't belong to their world, and that's why their world bends around me. They thought strength was about standing tallest, about raising voices above the crowd. But true strength isn't measured in noise, it's measured in how much silence a room can hold before it breaks. And now every step I take fills the space with a silence so heavy it crushes their certainty. I don't confront them, I don't need to. The air does it for me. They look at each other for answers, for courage, for some signal that their script still matters, but no one dares to lead, because deep down they know the moment I stopped speaking, I stopped needing them, and nothing terrifies them more than being unnecessary. Their rules sound weaker now, barely more than whispers, like prayers spoken to a God that's already left. They cling to them out of habit, not belief. And the irony is clear. They built those rules to control people like me, but I've proven those rules only control the people who believe in them. My silence has become the storm they never prepared for. Not fire, not chaos, not destruction, just the stillness that strips away illusions. It doesn't shout, it doesn't argue, it simply lingers until there's nowhere left for them to hide from the truth. Their world was fragile all along, and so they shrink, not because I demanded it, but because they finally realize I never needed to demand anything at all. The room doesn't belong to them anymore. It bends subtly every time I enter. Walls that once echoed with their laughter now hold their silence like a prison. Even when I say nothing, the air carries my presence, thick, unshakable, impossible to escape. They glance at me, but never for long. Eye contact burns them because it isn't a challenge, it's a reminder. I see through the script they worship. I see how hollow it always was, and worse, I made them see it too. Now their own voices betray them, trembling in ways they can't disguise. Every corner feels colder. Every word they force out dissolves before it lands. I don't have to raise a hand, don't have to break a thing. Just existing here is enough to unravel the performance they've spent their lives rehearsing. Their order, their unity, their fragile confidence. It all withers under the weight of someone who simply refuses to play along. They tried to define me as a mistake, tried to exile me as an error, but now my silence defines them, and the fear in their eyes proves it. I'm not outside their world anymore. I'm the shadow at its center, the quiet storm they can't predict, can't silence, can't erase. And though they won't admit it, they know. This silence is no longer absence. It is presence. It is control. They wanted an ending. They wanted closure written in their language with applause and forgiveness and roles neatly reassigned. But endings don't come from rules. Endings come from truth. And the truth is simple. I don't belong to their world, and I never will. I don't raise my voice, I don't lower it either. I don't bow, I don't fight, I don't explain. My silence is the answer, and it's the only one they'll ever get. Because once you step beyond the script, you stop needing to justify yourself to the actors trapped inside it. They thought rejection would shatter me, but rejection only revealed what was already broken. Their system, their certainty, their belief that control belonged to them. Now every rule they cling to feels like ash, slipping through fingers that once thought they were holding iron. I became untouchable not by changing their game, but by refusing to play. And that's what they'll never forgive me for. Not that I lost, not that I won, but that I walked away untouched, while their noise turned into silence they couldn't bear. So let them follow protocol. Let them worship their script. I'll remain what they can't define, what they can't silence, what they can't erase. The unspoken, the untouchable, the silence that rewrote them.